The coffee pot slipped from Maya's hand for the third time that shift, and this time she wasn't fast enough to catch it. Brown liquid splashed across the counter, soaking through the order tickets and dripping onto her already stained sneakers. She grabbed a towel with shaking fingers, exhaustion making even simple movements feel like wading through mud. "Maya, table 9 needs their check." Rico's voice cut through the dinner rush chaos at Stella's family restaurant. "And booth 6 wants extra napkins. Are you awake over there?" "Yeah, I'm good," Maya lied, wiping up the spilled coffee with mechanical efficiency. Her body was running on fumes, and the memory of sleep. Between her day shift at the medical supply warehouse and these evening shifts at Stella's, she was averaging maybe 4 hours of rest a night. But the student loan payment was due in 6 days, and her landlord had already slipped the final notice under her door. She didn't have the luxury of being tired. The lunch crowd had finally thinned out around 8:30 on this Wednesday evening, leaving only a handful of tables occupied. Maya refilled salt shakers and tried not to think about the fact that she'd been on her feet for 14 hours straight. Her lower back screamed with every movement, and there was a blister forming on her left heel that she couldn't do anything about until her shift ended at 11. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. "Hey, you okay?" Rico appeared beside her, his round face creased with concern. At 62, he'd been managing Stella's for 30 years and had a grandfather's ability to spot when someone was running on empty. "You look like you're about to fall over." "I'm fine, really." Maya forced a smile. "I just didn't sleep well last night." Rico studied her for a moment, then squeezed her shoulder gently. "Go take your break. 15 minutes. Sit down, eat something. That's an order." Maya wanted to argue she needed every penny from tonight's tips, but her legs were genuinely shaking. She nodded and headed toward the back booth they kept for staff breaks, grabbing a glass of water and collapsing onto the cracked vinyl seat. Through the window, she could see the Chicago skyline glowing against the evening sky. Somewhere in one of those gleaming towers, people were living the kind of life she'd once imagined for herself. Back when she was pre-med at Northwestern, back when her parents were alive, back when the future felt like something bright and full of possibility instead of an endless treadmill of bills and exhaustion. The car accident happened 3 years ago. Drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time. Her parents died instantly. The medical bills, the funeral costs, the discovery that they'd remortgaged the house to help pay for her tuition, it had all crashed down on her 23-year-old shoulders like an avalanche. She'd had to drop out 6 months before graduation, and the student loans had come due immediately. No degree, no mercy, just $60,000 of debt and interest that grew faster than she could pay it down. Maya closed her eyes and pressed her palms against her forehead. She was so tired, not just physically, but tired, deep in her bones, in her soul. Tired of always being one emergency away from homelessness. Tired of being invisible to everyone except when they needed something from her. "Maya!" Rico's voice held an edge she'd never heard before. "Need you out here. Now." She jerked upright, adrenaline cutting through the exhaustion. Rico never sounded like that, sharp, almost frightened. Maya rushed back to the front, and immediately understood why. The restaurant had gone silent. Completely, unnaturally silent. The family at table 4 had stopped mid-conversation, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. The 2 businessmen at the counter were staring straight ahead, barely breathing. Even the kitchen noises had died down to nothing. 3 black SUVs were parked outside, visible through the wide front windows. They weren't just parked, they were positioned, blocking both ends of the street like a barricade. And standing inside the restaurant's entrance were 4 men in dark suits, their postures radiating controlled violence. They hadn't drawn weapons, hadn't made threats, but every person in Stella's understood on a primal level that these were dangerous men. Behind them, a little girl walked in. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with dark curls that fell past her shoulders and enormous brown eyes that seemed too serious for such a young face. She wore a navy blue dress that probably cost more than Maya made in a month, with matching shoes that barely made a sound on the tile floor. Her small hand was held by a woman in her 50s, a nanny or housekeeper. Maya guessed, who looked around the restaurant with barely concealed disdain. "This is the place?" the woman asked in Italian-accented English, her lip curling slightly. It's what Mr. Russo requested," one of the suited men replied quietly. His eyes never stopped moving, cataloging exits, potential threats, the position of every person in the room. The little girl looked around with those solemn eyes, taking in the worn booths and faded photographs of old Chicago on the walls. She didn't smile, didn't react. She just stood there, small and still, like a porcelain doll someone had set down and forgotten. Rico appeared at Maya's elbow. "That's Russo's kid," he whispered, so quietly she almost didn't hear him. "Dante Russo. He owns half the South Side. You do not want to get involved with." But Maya wasn't listening anymore. She was watching the little girl, and something about the child's absolute stillness, the careful way she held herself, triggered a memory Maya had spent 3 years trying to bury. Her younger sister, Lily, 7 years old, standing in the hospital corridor after their parents' funeral, not crying, not speaking, just standing there with that same terrible stillness while the world fell apart around her. Lily had been deaf since birth. Their parents had spent years teaching Maya sign language so she could communicate with her sister, and had built their whole life around making sure Lily never felt isolated or alone. And then they died, and Maya, drowning in grief and debt, had made the worst decision of her life. She'd let Lily go into foster care, told herself it was temporary, that she'd get her sister back once she got on her feet. But the system had moved faster than she could, and Lily had been adopted by a family in Oregon, a family that could give her everything Maya couldn't. Maya still had nightmares about the look on Lily's face the day the social worker came. That same terrible stillness. "Sit anywhere," Rico was saying to the nanny, his voice strained with false cheer. "We'll get you taken care of right away." The nanny chose booth 7, the one farthest from other customers, with clear sightlines to both exits. The suited men positioned themselves around the restaurant like chess pieces. The little girl slid into the booth and sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the table. "Maya, you take them," Rico said quietly. "Everyone else is too scared to go near that booth." "What's her name?" Maya asked, still watching the child. "The girl? I don't know. Why does it—" But Maya was already moving, grabbing a kid's menu and a glass of apple juice from behind the counter. Her exhaustion had evaporated, replaced by something that felt almost like anger. This child, whoever she was, whatever dangerous family she came from, was still just a little girl, and Maya had failed one little girl already. She wouldn't ignore another. The suited men tensed as she approached, hands moving inside their jackets. The nanny looked up sharply. "I'm Maya, your waitress tonight," she said, keeping her voice gentle and setting the apple juice on the table. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The little girl didn't respond, didn't even look up. "Her name is Isabella," the nanny said curtly. "She'll have chicken fingers and fries. Nothing else." "Does she like chicken fingers?" Maya asked, still looking at the child. "Maybe she'd like to choose for herself?" "She doesn't," the nanny started, but Maya had already knelt down beside the booth, bringing herself to the little girl's eye level. That's when she saw it. The way Isabella's eyes tracked movement but never quite focused on faces. The slight tilt of her head, like she was trying to hear something just out of reach. The careful, controlled way she held herself, as if she'd learned that the world wouldn't accommodate her, so she had to accommodate it. Maya's hands moved before her brain could second-guess the decision. She signed, slow and clear. "Hello, my name is Maya." The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Isabella's head snapped up, her eyes going wide with shock. For a moment, she just stared at Maya's hands like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then her own small hands lifted, trembling slightly. "Can you understand me?" Maya's throat tightened with emotion, but she kept her face neutral, professional. She signed back. "Yes. Can you read my lips too, or just sign?" "Both," Isabella signed. Her hands moved slowly, carefully, like she hadn't practiced in a long time. But no one here knows sign language except Papa, and he's always busy. The nanny had gone rigid, staring at Maya with an expression somewhere between shock and suspicion. "How do you know that?" she demanded. "How do you know her language?" "My sister," Maya said simply, then turned back to Isabella and signed. "What would you really like to eat? Not what they think you should eat, what do you want?" Isabella's face transformed. It wasn't quite a smile, but something cracked, in that careful stillness. "Spaghetti," she signed, "with lots of cheese, and chocolate cake. Spaghetti with extra Parmesan cheese and chocolate cake," Maya repeated aloud for the nanny. "Coming right up." She started to stand, but Isabella's small hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. The grip was surprisingly strong, almost desperate. "Wait," the little girl signed with one hand, refusing to let go with the other. "Don't go. Please don't go. Everyone always goes." Maya's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She looked into this child's eyes and saw every lonely moment, every person who'd looked through her instead of at her, every time she'd tried to communicate and been ignored. "I'm just going to put in your order," Maya signed, then gently covered Isabella's hand with her own. "I promise I'll come right back. I'm not going anywhere." "You promise?" Isabella's eyes searched Maya's face with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed. "I promise." Slowly, reluctantly, Isabella released her grip. Maya stood and walked back toward the kitchen, acutely aware of every eye in the restaurant tracking her movement. Rico intercepted her at the counter. "What the hell just happened?" he whispered urgently. "I've never seen that kid react to anyone except her father. How do you know sign language?" "My sister was deaf," Maya said shortly. "Can you make sure her spaghetti has extra cheese? And actually heat up the chocolate cake. Don't just serve it cold." She put in the order and turned back to find Isabella watching her from across the restaurant, those dark eyes locked onto her like she was afraid Maya might disappear if she looked away. The nanny was on her phone, speaking rapid Italian, and the suited men had moved closer to the booth, their posture suggesting they were reporting something important. Maya grabbed a notepad and pen and returned to booth 7. She slid into the seat across from Isabella, and the little girl's face lit up with that almost smile. Again. "What's your favorite color?" Maya signed. "Purple." Isabella responded immediately, her hands moving faster now, more confident. "Like the sky right before night." "What's yours?" "Blue, like the ocean." "I've never seen the ocean," Isabella signed, and there was such wistfulness in her expression that Maya felt her chest tighten again. "Never?" Maya signed back. "Would you like to?" Isabella nodded vigorously, then her hands moved in a rush. "Papa says maybe someday, but he's always too busy with work. And Mrs. Caruso," she gestured to the nanny, "says the beach is dirty and loud and not appropriate for me." Maya glanced at Mrs. Caruso, who was still on her phone, still speaking urgently in Italian. She caught enough to understand. She knows sign language. "No, I've never seen her before. Mr. Russo needs to know immediately." A cold finger of unease traced down Maya's spine. She was getting involved in something she didn't understand, something that the entire restaurant seemed to fear. But when she looked back at Isabella, this little girl who'd been invisible in a room full of people, until someone finally saw her, Maya couldn't bring herself to care about the danger. "Tell me about school," Maya signed. "Do you have friends there?" Isabella's expression shuddered immediately, and Maya knew she'd hit a nerve. The little girl's hands moved slowly, reluctantly. "I don't go to school. Papa says it's not safe. Mrs. Caruso teaches me at home, but she doesn't know sign language, so I have to read lips, and it's hard, and I get tired, and sometimes I don't understand," and her hands stopped moving abruptly, and she looked down at her lap, small shoulders hunching forward. Maya reached across the table and gently tapped the table to get Isabella's attention. When the little girl looked up, Maya signed. "That sounds really lonely." Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back fiercely. "I'm not supposed to complain. Papa does his best, and I'm lucky, and I should be grateful." She was quoting someone, Maya realized, repeating words that had been drilled into her, probably by the same people who'd decided she didn't need to go to school or have friends or see the ocean. "You can be grateful and lonely at the same time," Maya signed. "Both things can be true." Isabella stared at her for a long moment, and then something remarkable happened. A single tear escaped and rolled down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. She just sat there, looking at Maya like she'd just been given permission to feel something she'd been holding back for years. "Excuse me." Mrs. Caruso had finished her call and was staring at Maya with unconcealed hostility. "What exactly are you discussing with Isabella?" "Just getting to know her while we wait for her food," Maya said evenly. "She's a sweet kid. That's not appropriate. You're a waitress, not her. Her food's ready." Rico interrupted, appearing with a plate of spaghetti that was steaming hot and covered in an absurd amount of Parmesan cheese, exactly as Maya had requested. He set it down in front of Isabella, along with the heated chocolate cake, then retreated quickly. Isabella looked at the food, then up at Maya, then signed. "You remembered the extra cheese." "I promised," Maya signed back. "Now eat before it gets cold." She stood to give Isabella space, but once again, the little girl's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "Stay." Isabella signed with her free hand, the motion almost desperate. "Please, just stay while I eat, just for a few minutes." Maya glanced at Mrs. Caruso, who looked like she wanted to object, but was uncertain of her authority in this situation. She looked at Rico, who gave her a tiny nod, and then she looked at Isabella, at this lonely little girl who just asked for the smallest thing, someone to sit with her while she ate. "Okay," Maya signed, sliding back into the booth. "I'll stay." Isabella's grip on her wrist loosened but didn't release completely, as if she needed the physical connection to believe Maya was real. She ate her spaghetti slowly, methodically, occasionally glancing up to make sure Maya was still there. Between bites, she signed questions. "How old are you? Where do you live? Do you have any pets? What's your favorite food?" Maya answered each one, watching this child come alive with every exchange. It was like watching a flower bloom in time-lapse, like watching someone remember how to be a person instead of a porcelain doll. They were halfway through the chocolate cake Isabella had insisted Maya share it when the restaurant's door opened. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. The man who entered didn't walk, he moved like a predator, each step deliberate and controlled. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair shot through with silver at the temples and eyes like smoke, gray and cold and penetrating. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Maya's car, and when he moved, the fabric draped perfectly across shoulders that suggested he was more than capable of violence despite the civilized exterior. But it was the way everyone reacted that told Maya everything she needed to know. The last few customers in Stella's went absolutely silent. Rico actually took a step backward. The suited men who'd been positioned around the restaurant straightened to attention, and Mrs. Caruso stood up so quickly she nearly knocked over her water glass. "Mr. Russo," she said, and there was genuine fear in her voice. "I called you immediately when..." The man, Dante Russo, held up one hand, and Mrs. Caruso fell silent instantly. His smoke-gray eyes swept across the restaurant, cataloging everything in a single glance, before landing on booth 7. On Maya, on Isabella, whose hand was still wrapped around Maya's wrist. He moved toward them with that same predatory grace, and Maya's survival instinct screamed at her to run. This was danger in its purest form. This was power and violence, and something ancient and merciless wrapped in an expensive suit. But Isabella's grip on her wrist tightened, and when Maya glanced down, the little girl was signing frantically with her free hand. "Don't leave. Please don't leave. He's scary sometimes, but he won't hurt you. Please." So Maya stayed. Dante Russo reached their booth and stopped, looking down at his daughter. "Isabella," he said, and his voice was deep and controlled, with the barest hint of an Italian accent. "Mrs. Caruso says you've made a new friend." It wasn't a question. It was something else entirely, a statement that carried weight and implications Maya didn't fully understand. Isabella nodded, her hand still gripping Maya's wrist. She signed something rapid and excited, too fast for Maya to fully catch, but she got the essential meaning. "She can understand me, Papa. She knows sign language. She actually talks to me." Dante Russo's eyes shifted to Maya's face, and she felt like a butterfly pinned to a board under that gaze. He studied her with an intensity that was almost physical, taking in every detail: her faded uniform, her exhausted eyes, the way she was sitting protectively close to his daughter. "You know ASL," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Maya managed to say, keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will. "My sister was deaf. She was adopted. I don't see her anymore." Something flickered in those cold gray eyes, recognition, maybe, or understanding. "And you just happened to be working here tonight. Just happened to approach my daughter." There was a threat buried in those words, a suggestion that perhaps this wasn't coincidence at all. Maya's pulse hammered in her throat, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "I just happened to see a little girl being ignored," she said quietly, "and I couldn't walk past that." The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Isabella's small hand trembling, lightly against her wrist. She'd made a mistake, she realized. She'd involved herself in something dangerous without understanding the stakes. This man, Dante Russo, wasn't just wealthy or powerful. He was something else entirely. Something the whole restaurant feared. Then Isabella did something that changed everything. She released Maya's wrist, but only so she could sign with both hands, her movements sharp and insistent. "She's nice, Papa." She promised she wouldn't leave. "She's the first person besides you who's ever really talked to me. Please don't scare her away. Please." Dante Russo looked at his daughter, and for just a moment, the cold mask cracked. Maya saw something raw and painful flash across his face, guilt, maybe, or grief, or some complicated mixture of both. Go wait in the car with Mrs. Caruso. He signed to Isabella, his hands moving with practiced fluency. I need to speak with your new friend alone. Papa, no. I'm not going to hurt her, he signed, and there was a gentleness in his movements that contrasted sharply with the steel in his eyes. I just need to talk to her. 5 minutes. Then you can say goodbye. Isabella looked between them, clearly torn. Finally, reluctantly, she slid out of the booth. But before she left, she turned to Maya and signed, You promised you wouldn't leave. I won't. Maya signed back, even though every instinct was screaming at her to run. 5 minutes, and then I'll say goodbye properly. I promise. Isabella nodded, then let Mrs. Caruso lead her toward the door. She looked back twice, those dark eyes worried, before finally disappearing into one of the SUVs outside. Dante Russo slid into the booth across from Maya, and suddenly the space felt very small. He folded his hands on the table, and Maya noticed the scars on his knuckles, the expensive watch on his wrist, the wedding ring that looked worn from years of wear. Let's be very clear about something, he said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. I don't believe in coincidences. So before we continue this conversation, I need to know, who are you really, and who sent you? Maya's mouth went dry. I'm sorry, what? Who sent me? Nobody sent me. I'm a waitress. I work here 5 nights a week and at a warehouse during the day. That's it. Dante Russo's expression didn't change. You expect me to believe that you just happen to know sign language? Just happen to be working tonight? Just happen to approach my daughter who has been invisible to every person in this city for 6 years? Yes, Maya said, and she heard the edge of frustration creeping into her voice despite her fear. Because that's exactly what happened. I saw a little girl being ignored, and it reminded me of my sister, and I just couldn't walk past her. Your sister. His eyes narrowed slightly. The one who was adopted. Lily. She was 7 when our parents died. I was 23, drowning in debt, working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. I thought. Maya's voice cracked, and she hated herself for showing weakness in front of this man. I thought foster care would be temporary, just until I got on my feet, but they moved fast, and a family in Oregon wanted her, and the social worker said she'd have everything I couldn't give her, and she stopped, pressing her palms against her eyes. She hadn't talked about Lily to anyone in 3 years, hadn't let herself think about it because the guilt was too heavy to carry and still function. You let her go, Dante Russo said, and there was no judgment in his voice, just a flat statement of fact. I let her go, Maya repeated, lowering her hands. Worst decision of my life. I think about her every single day. So when I saw Isabella sitting there, alone, with everyone ignoring her because they were too scared of you to see her, I couldn't do it again. I couldn't let another little girl be invisible. Dante studied her for a long moment, those smoke-gray eyes reading her like a book. Finally, he said, You're telling the truth. Yes. Which means you're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably stupid, Maya admitted. But I'm good at that. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Do you know who I am? Rico said your name is Dante Russo. Said you own half the South Side. Based on how everyone in this restaurant is currently pretending we don't exist while also watching every move we make, I'm guessing you're someone important and dangerous. Important and dangerous, Dante repeated, and this time there was definitely dark amusement in his voice. That's diplomatic. Most people would say crime boss, mafia, criminal. Maya's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. Are those things true? Yes. The single word hung in the air between them. Maya had suspected. Of course you didn't get the kind of fear reaction Dante Russo generated by being a legitimate businessman, but hearing it confirmed was different. This wasn't some vague danger. This was concrete, real, the kind of thing that got people killed. I should probably leave now, Maya said quietly. Probably, Dante agreed. But you won't. Why not? Because you promised my daughter you'd come say goodbye. And you keep your promises, don't you, Maya? The way he said her name with that slight Italian inflection made something warm and dangerous curl in her stomach. She pushed the feeling away viciously. This man was a criminal. Dangerous. Not someone she should feel anything toward except healthy fear. I do keep my promises, she said. So if we're done here, I should... We're not done. Dante leaned back in the booth, his posture deceptively relaxed. You've created a problem, Maya. A significant one. I talked to your daughter. How is that a problem? My daughter hasn't smiled in 6 years, hasn't signed with anyone except me and her therapist in 18 months, hasn't shown interest in anything or anyone since her mother died. His voice remained even, but Maya heard the pain underneath. And then you walk up to her table, sign hello, and suddenly she's alive again. She's excited. She's hopeful. Do you understand what that means? Maya's throat tightened. That she needs more than just you and Mrs. Caruso? That she's going to want to see you again, and again, and that when you inevitably disappear back to your life, she's going to be devastated. Dante's eyes hardened. So I need to know right now, are you going to disappear? Because if you are, it's better that you leave immediately and never come back. I can handle her being angry with me. I can't handle her hoping for something that won't happen. Maya stared at him, understanding washing over her in cold waves. This wasn't a threat. This was a father trying to protect his child from more disappointment. I don't want to hurt her, Maya said softly. I just wanted to help. I know, but helping requires commitment. It requires showing up, consistently, being someone she can rely on. Can you do that? Maya thought about her schedule, the warehouse shifts, the restaurant shifts, the bills that never stopped coming, the exhaustion that was her constant companion. Adding anything else to her life seemed impossible. But then she thought about Isabella's face when she'd signed, "You can understand me?" That moment of pure, devastating hope. Yes, Maya heard herself say. I can do that. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. You understand that anyone close to my daughter becomes a target? That my enemies would use you without hesitation? I understand that you're trying to scare me away. I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're agreeing to. I understand that Isabella needs someone besides you who can communicate with her. I understand that she's lonely and isolated and probably scared most of the time because her world is full of people who look through her instead of at her. Maya leaned forward. I understand that better than you think. They stared at each other across the table, and Maya had the strange sensation of being evaluated, tested, measured against some internal standard she couldn't see. 3 times a week, Dante said abruptly. You'll come to the house. Teach her. Spend time with her. Be someone she can talk to. I'll pay you. I don't want your money. His eyebrows rose. Everyone wants money. I want to help your daughter. That's not something you should have to pay for. Nevertheless. Dante pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. You'll be compensated for your time. $2,000 a week. Maya's mind went blank. $2,000 a week was more than she made in a month at both jobs combined. It was enough to cover her loan payments with money left over. It was enough to stop drowning. That's too much, she managed to say. It's what your time is worth to me, and it's what it costs to ensure you're protected. He stood up smoothly. One of my men will drive you home tonight. Tomorrow they'll pick you up and bring you to the house. We'll discuss the schedule and expectations then. Wait, I have work tomorrow. Not anymore. You work for me now. He said it with such casual certainty, as if he'd just rearranged the universe and expected it to comply. Rico will understand. I'll make sure of it. Maya stood up too, anger cutting through her fear. You can't just decide my life for me. I can, and I have. You agreed to help my daughter, which means you agreed to enter my world. And in my world, I don't leave vulnerable people unprotected. His eyes held hers. You became my responsibility the moment Isabella touched your hand. You became a target the moment my enemies saw you together. So you can accept my protection and my money? Or you can walk out that door and spend the rest of your significantly shortened life looking over your shoulder. Your choice. The words should have sounded like a threat, but they didn't. They sounded like a statement of fact, delivered by someone who understood exactly how dangerous his world was. This is insane, Maya whispered. Yes, Dante agreed. Welcome to my life. Now, let's go tell Isabella goodbye before she storms back in here demanding to know why I'm keeping you from her. He gestured toward the door, and Maya found herself walking toward it on unsteady legs. The suited men fell into formation around them, creating a protective bubble as they stepped outside into the cool Chicago night. Isabella was standing beside one of the SUVs, Mrs. Caruso's hand on her shoulder. When she saw Maya, her face lit up with that almost smile, and she pulled free to rush forward. Maya knelt down, bringing herself to Isabella's level. Hi again, she signed. You're okay, Isabella signed back, relief clear in her movements. Papa didn't scare you away. I promised I wouldn't leave, remember? People break promises all the time. The matter-of-fact way she signed it broke Maya's heart. Well, I don't. And I have another promise to make. I'm going to come see you again. Tomorrow. And then lots of times after that. Would you like that? Isabella's eyes went wide. Really? You promise? I promise. We can talk. And play. And maybe I can help you with your lessons. Would that be okay? Isabella didn't sign a response. Instead, she threw her arms around Maya's neck and held on tight, the way a drowning person holds onto a life raft. Maya wrapped her arms around this small, lonely girl and felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen solid since the day she'd let Lily go. Thank you, Isabella signed when she finally pulled back. Thank you for seeing me. I'll always see you, Maya signed back. That's a promise, too. Dante watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. When Isabella finally climbed into the SUV with Mrs. Caruso, he turned to Maya. Marco will drive you home, he said, gesturing to one of the suited men. He'll pick you up tomorrow at 10. Pack a bag. You'll be staying at the house for a few days while we assess security. Staying at I can't just. You can, and you will. Like I said, you're in my world now. He paused. And Maya? Thank you. For seeing her. For keeping your promise. Before she could respond, he slid into the lead SUV, and the convoy pulled away, leaving Maya standing on the sidewalk with a suited man named Marco looking at her expectantly. Your address, miss? He asked politely. Maya rattled it off automatically, her mind still spinning. 20 minutes ago, she'd been an exhausted waitress counting down the minutes until her shift ended. Now she was somehow employed by a Mafia boss, committed to helping his deaf daughter, and apparently moving into his house for security assessment. Her life had just been completely upended, and the strangest part was that she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not when she remembered the look on Isabella's face when someone finally understood her. The Russo estate wasn't a house, it was a fortress disguised as a mansion. Marco drove through gates that looked like they could withstand a tank, past security checkpoints that would make the TSA jealous, and up a winding driveway lined with lights that made the place glow like something out of a fairy tale. Except fairy tales didn't usually come with armed guards every 50 feet. Maya had spent a restless night in her apartment, half convinced that the entire encounter had been some kind of exhaustion-induced hallucination. But when Marco appeared at her door at exactly 10 a.m., professional and patient while she threw clothes into a duffel bag with shaking hands, reality crashed back down. Now, standing in the circular driveway while Marco retrieved her bag, Maya stared up at the 3-story stone building and tried to process that this was where Isabella lived. This fortress. This beautiful, isolated prison. Miss Chen. A woman in her 60s appeared at the front door, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her expression a perfect blend of welcome and assessment. I'm Teresa Martinez, the house manager. Mr. Russo is waiting for you in his study. Marco will show you the way, and then I'll give you a proper tour and get you settled in your room. Thank you. Maya managed, following Marco through doors that probably weighed more than her car, and into an entrance hall that belonged in a museum. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, a staircase that curved up to the second floor like something from a period drama, and absolutely no sign of anything child-friendly. No toys scattered around, no bright colors, nothing to suggest that a 6-year-old lived here. Marco led her down a hallway lined with expensive art that Maya recognized from art history classes she'd taken in another lifetime. He stopped at a heavy wooden door and knocked twice. Come in, Dante's voice, muffled by the door. Marco opened it and gestured for Maya to enter. She stepped into a room that was somehow both intimidating and comfortable floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive desk that faced windows overlooking the grounds. Leather furniture that looked soft enough to sink into. Dante sat behind the desk, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to his forearms. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian that Maya couldn't follow, but his tone suggested he was giving orders that he expected to be followed immediately. He saw her and gestured to one of the leather chairs across from his desk. Maya sat, trying not to feel like she was about to be interrogated. Dante finished his call and set the phone down, turning his full attention to her. In the daylight streaming through the windows, she could see details she'd missed last night. The lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his reputation would imply. The silver in his hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. The way his shirt fit across shoulders that came from actual work, not just expensive tailoring. He was, Maya realized with a jolt of uncomfortable awareness, extremely attractive. Dangerous, yes. Criminal, definitely. But also magnetic in a way that made it hard to look away. Did you sleep? He asked, breaking the silence. Not really. Neither did Isabella. She was up at 6, asking when you were coming. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She hasn't been excited about anything in years. You've already changed her life, and you've only known her for 12 hours. I just talked to her, Maya said. That's not changing anything. You're wrong, but you'll see. He stood up and moved to a sideboard where a coffee service waited. Coffee? Yes, please. Black. He poured 2 cups and handed her one before settling into the chair beside hers, rather than going back behind the desk. The casual gesture somehow made the space feel more intimate. We need to establish some ground rules, Dante said. For your safety and Isabella's. Okay. First, you don't leave this property without security. Ever. I don't care if it's to the corner store or across the country. Marco or one of his team goes with you. Maya bristled. I'm not a prisoner. No, you're a target. There's a difference. My enemies are always looking for weakness, and the moment they realize you matter to Isabella, they'll try to use you. I won't let that happen. The protective intensity in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. Who are your enemies? Long list. The Calabrese family has been trying to move into my territory for 2 years. The Morettis would love to see me vulnerable. And there are always freelancers who think taking out a Russo would improve their reputation. He said it casually, like discussing the weather. You don't need to know the details. You just need to trust that Marco and his team will keep you safe. And if I don't want to live in a past process, fortress? Then you walk away now, and Isabella learns that promises don't mean anything. His gray eyes held hers. Is that what you want? Maya looked down at her coffee. No. Good. Second rule. Anything you see or hear in this house stays in this house. You don't discuss my business with anyone, ever. Not friends, not family, not the police if they come asking. Understood? I don't even know what your business is. And it's better that way. Do we have an agreement? Maya thought about what she was agreeing to, becoming complicit in whatever illegal activities Dante Russo conducted, tying herself to a criminal organization, putting herself in danger she didn't fully understand. Then she thought about Isabella's face when someone finally understood her. We have an agreement. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Third rule, Dante continued. Isabella comes first. Always. If I'm in a meeting and she needs something, you interrupt. If there's danger, you get her out first. If you have to choose between my orders and her safety, you choose her. Clear? Crystal clear? Good. He took a sip of his coffee, studying her over the rim of his cup. Teresa will show you to your room. It's on the same floor as Isabella's, 2 doors down. You'll have your own bathroom, workspace, anything you need. Meals are at regular times, but Teresa can accommodate your schedule. Isabella's lessons start at 9, break for lunch at noon, resume at 1, and finish at 3. After that, her time is her own, and I want you with her as much as she wants you there. What about Mrs. Caruso? She'll continue handling the academic curriculum. You're here for the things that matter more: communication, socialization, helping Isabella remember how to be a child instead of a ghost. His voice softened. Can you do that? I can try. That's all I'm asking. He stood, and Maya stood with him. Isabella doesn't know you're here yet. She's in the library with Mrs. Caruso, working on mathematics. Why don't you surprise her? Maya's heart jumped. Now? Unless you'd like to unpack first? No, I'll library. Where's the library? Dante smiled, a real smile this time, and it transformed his face completely. He looked younger, more human, less like the dangerous crime boss and more like just a father who loved his daughter. Teresa will show you. And Maya? He caught her arm gently as she turned to go. Thank you for coming, for giving her a chance at something better. The sincerity in his voice, the vulnerability underneath the controlled exterior, made Maya's breath catch. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that reminded her of cedar and rain. She could see the faint scars on his knuckles, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his eyes weren't just gray but had flecks of blue near the pupils. She deserves it, Maya said quietly. Every child deserves to be seen. Yes. Something passed between them in that moment. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. They do. Teresa appeared in the doorway, and Dante released Maya's arm. Teresa will take good care of you. If you need anything at all, just ask. There are no stupid questions or unreasonable requests where Isabella's happiness is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Russo. Dante, he corrected. If you're going to live in my house and care for my daughter, we're past formalities. Then call me Maya, not Miss Chen. Maya, he repeated, and again, that slight Italian inflection made her name sound like something precious. Go find Isabella. She's been waiting for you. Teresa led Maya through a maze of hallways, pointing out rooms as they passed the formal dining room, the kitchen, the conservatory, and the gym until finally stopping outside a set of double doors. The library, Teresa said warmly. Isabella spends most of her time here. It's her favorite room in the house. Maya took a deep breath and pushed open the doors. The library was enormous, with 2 stories of bookshelves connected by a spiral staircase and windows that let in floods of natural light. It was beautiful and overwhelming, and felt more like a sanctuary than a room. And sitting at a small desk near the windows, head bent over a math workbook, was Isabella. Mrs. Caruso sat nearby, reading something on her tablet, not even looking at the child she was supposed to be teaching. Isabella worked silently, methodically, her small hand gripping a pencil too hard as she filled in answers. Maya's footsteps were quiet on the hardwood floor, but Isabella must have felt the vibration because her head suddenly snapped up. Her eyes widened, mouth falling open in shock. Then she was moving, abandoning her desk and running across the library, her face transformed by a smile so bright it could have lit up the entire room. Maya knelt down just in time to catch her as Isabella threw herself forward, arms wrapping around her neck in a fierce hug. You came, Isabella signed frantically when she finally pulled back. You really came. I thought maybe I dreamed it. I thought maybe you'd disappear like everyone else. I promised, Maya signed back, her throat tight with emotion. And I keep my promises. I'm going to be here for a while, if you want me. How long? Maya thought about the agreement she'd just made with Dante, the room waiting for her, the new reality she'd stepped into. As long as you need me, she signed. Isabella's face crumpled, and she threw herself back into Maya's arms, holding on like she might never let go. Over her small shoulder, Maya could see Mrs. Caruso watching with an expression that was half surprise, half resentment. But Maya didn't care, because for the first time in 3 years, since she'd let Lily go, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Even if that place was in the middle of a fortress, working for a crime boss, putting herself in danger she didn't fully understand. Some things Maya was learning were worth the risk. The first week passed in a blur of routine and revelation. Maya learned that Isabella was brilliant reading at a 9th grade level, solving mathematics problems that made Maya's head hurt, and speaking 3 languages, Italian, English, and Spanish, despite her deafness. Mrs. Caruso had done her job well academically, but she'd failed at everything else. Isabella had no friends her own age, no understanding of pop culture or children's games, no experience with anything messy or chaotic or fun. She was a 6-year-old who'd been raised like a miniature adult, and Maya could see the cost in the way she moved too careful, too controlled, always watching to see if she'd made a mistake. So Maya started small. Finger painting? Isabella signed, staring at the supplies Maya had convinced Teresa to buy. That's for babies. That's what people who've never finger painted say. Maya signed back, already opening the paint jars. Come on, I'll show you. She dipped her fingers in red paint and drew a simple flower on the large sheet of paper spread across the library floor. Isabella watched, fascinated despite herself. You try, Maya encouraged. Isabella hesitated, then dipped one finger delicately into blue paint. She made a single, careful line on the paper. More, Maya signed. Use your whole hand. Make a mess. It's okay to be messy. Papa doesn't like messes. Papa isn't here right now, and I promise we'll clean it up after. Slowly, Isabella dipped her whole hand in the paint. She pressed it against the paper, leaving a perfect blue handprint. Her eyes widened. Again, Maya signed, grinning. This time, Isabella pressed both hands into different colors. Then she was moving, covering the paper in handprints and swirls, paint getting on her clothes and face and not caring because she was laughing, actually laughing for the first time since Maya had met her. That's how Dante found them an hour later. Maya heard the door open and looked up to find him standing in the doorway, still in his work suit, staring at the chaos. Paint everywhere, paper covered in wild colors. His daughter sitting in the middle of it all, covered head to toe in paint and grinning like the child she should have been all along. Papa, Isabella signed excitedly. Look what we made. Dante's expression was unreadable as he walked closer, careful to avoid the paint-covered areas. He knelt down beside Isabella and studied the mess of colors. It's beautiful, he signed. Maya says it's okay to be messy sometimes. Does she? His eyes met Maya's over Isabella's head, and she couldn't read what she saw there. Anger? Approval? Something else? We'll clean it up, Maya said quickly. I just thought. You thought correctly, Dante interrupted. He looked back at his daughter. Go wash up for dinner. We're eating in 30 minutes. Isabella hugged him, getting paint all over his expensive suit, and then hugged Maya before running out of the library, still grinning, leaving Maya alone with Dante. He stood slowly, looking at the paint on his suit jacket. This cost $3,000. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, Maya said, even though she had no idea how much dry cleaning a $3,000 suit jacket would cost. Don't be ridiculous. He shrugged out of the jacket and tossed it over a chair. It's just money. Her happiness is priceless. He moved to where Maya was still sitting on the floor and lowered himself down beside her, completely unconcerned about getting paint on his dress pants. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the tension in his shoulders. Long day? She asked. Long week. The Calabrese family is making moves, testing boundaries. I've been putting out fires. He looked at the painted paper. But then I come, home to this, and everything else seems less important. She's a good kid, really bright. I know. I just don't know how to. He gestured vaguely at the mess. The normal childhood things. I can keep her safe, but I can't make her happy. I don't know how. You don't have to do it alone, Maya said quietly. That's what I'm here for. Dante turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You've been here a week, and she's already changed. More talkative, more animated. She actually laughed today, did you know that? I heard her from downstairs, and I almost didn't recognize the sound. She just needed permission to be a kid. She needed you. He reached out and wiped a smudge of blue paint from her cheek with his thumb, the gesture startlingly intimate. You're a miracle, Maya Chen. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. I'm just doing what you asked. You're doing more than that, and we both know it. His hand lingered against her face for a moment longer, then dropped. I should let you clean up. Teresa will have my head if we're late for dinner. He stood and offered her his hand. Maya took it, letting him pull her to her feet, acutely aware of how much larger his hand was than hers, how warm his skin felt against her palm. Thank you, he said, still holding her hand, for seeing what she needed, for giving it to her. You're welcome, Maya managed to say, and then he was releasing her hand and walking away, leaving her standing in a library covered in paint, her heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. This was dangerous, she realized. Not the Mafia connections or the security threats or the enemies watching from the shadows. This the way Dante Russo looked at her like she was something precious. The way Isabella wrapped around her heart so completely. The way this fortress was starting to feel less like a prison and more like a home. That was the real danger. And Maya was falling into it, head first. 3 weeks into her stay at the Russo estate, Maya woke to the sound of screaming. She bolted upright in bed, heart hammering, disoriented in the darkness. It took her a moment to remember where she was, the guest room 2 doors down from Isabella's, with its expensive sheets and blackout curtains that made it impossible to tell if it was 3 a.m. or noon. Another scream, high-pitched and terrified. Isabella. Maya was out of bed and running before her brain fully engaged, her bare feet slapping against the cold marble floors. She burst through Isabella's door to find the little girl thrashing in her bed, caught in the grip of a nightmare, her small hands signing frantically at invisible threats. Isabella, sweetheart, wake up. Maya rushed to the bed, gathering the child into her arms. It's okay. You're safe. I'm here. Isabella's eyes flew open, wide and unfocused, still trapped between dream and reality. Her hands gripped Maya's pajama shirt with desperate strength. Mama, she signed, the movement jerky and panicked. Where's Mama? The bad men took her. The blood. So much blood. Maya's heart broke. She shifted so Isabella could see her face, her hands, in the dim light from the hallway. You're safe, she signed firmly. You're in your room. I'm here. Your papa is here. You're safe. Promise? Isabella's face was streaked with tears. I promise. The door opened wider, and Dante appeared, dressed in pajama pants and nothing else, his hair disheveled from sleep. His eyes found Isabella immediately, cataloging her distress with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd dealt with this before. Same nightmare. He signed to Isabella as he moved to the other side of the bed. Isabella nodded, burrowing deeper into Maya's arms. The day Mama died, the men with guns. I keep seeing it. Dante's jaw clenched, and Maya saw something raw and painful flash across his face. He reached out and stroked his daughter's hair with infinite gentleness. It was 2 years ago, he signed. Those men are gone. They can never hurt you or anyone else again. But what if new bad men come? Isabella's hands trembled. What if they hurt you? Or Maya? That won't happen, Dante signed with absolute certainty. How do you know? Because I won't let it. Isabella looked between them, her father, all controlled strength and lethal capability, and Maya, who was discovering that maternal instinct could be just as fierce as any weapon. Both of you promise that you'll stay safe? We promise, Maya signed, even though she had no idea if that was a promise she could keep. It took another 30 minutes to calm Isabella down enough for sleep. Maya stayed, lying beside the little girl in her too large bed, one arm wrapped protectively around her small frame. Dante sat in the chair beside the bed, keeping watch like a sentinel, refusing to leave until he was certain his daughter was truly resting. When Isabella's breathing finally evened out into the deep rhythm of sleep, Maya carefully extracted herself and stepped into the hallway. Dante followed, pulling the door mostly closed behind them but leaving it open enough to hear if Isabella called out again. How often does she have nightmares? Maya asked quietly. 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes more. Dante rubbed a hand over his face, and for the first time since Maya had met him, he looked his age, exhausted, worn down by burdens she couldn't fully comprehend. She was there when it happened, when her mother was killed. Maya's breath caught. She saw it? Not all of it. Maria got her hidden before. He stopped, his jaw working. But she heard everything. The gunshots, Maria's screams, my men fighting back. She was 4 years old, and she was trapped in a closet listening to her mother die. Oh God. Maya's hand went to her mouth. Dante, I'm so sorry. It was a message from the Vitali family. They wanted territory I controlled, thought killing my wife would make me weak, distracted. His voice went cold, emotionless, in the way Maya had learned meant he was feeling too much to show any of it. They were wrong. What happened to them? What do you think happened? He met her eyes, and Maya saw the truth there, brutal, final, absolute. I protected my family the only way I know how. Maya should have been horrified, should have been disgusted by the casual admission of violence, of revenge, of death. But all she could think about was Isabella's terrified face, the nightmares that still haunted her 2 years later, the childhood stolen by men who saw a little girl as collateral damage. Good, she said quietly. Dante's eyebrows rose. Good? They hurt your daughter. They killed your wife. I'm glad they're gone. Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or understanding. You're not what I expected, Maya Chen. What did you expect? Someone who would judge, who would see what I am and what I do and be repulsed by it. I see a father who would do anything to protect his child, Maya said. The rest is just details. The rest is murder and criminal enterprise and things that would put me in prison for the rest of my life if the wrong people found out. Then I guess it's a good thing. I'm not the wrong person. They stood in the hallway, close enough that Maya could feel the heat radiating from his bare chest, could see the scars that marked his skin, evidence of a violent life she was only beginning to understand. She should step back, maintain professional distance, remember that this was her employer and nothing more. But she didn't move, and neither did he. You should go back to bed, Dante said finally, his voice rough. It's late. So should you. I don't sleep much anymore. Not since Maria. He glanced back at Isabella's partially open door. I stay up, make sure she's safe. It's the only time I feel like I'm doing something right. Maya's heart ached for him, this dangerous, powerful man who was so lost, when it came to helping his daughter heal. You're doing more right than you think. She feels safe with you. That matters. She feels safe with you too. Maybe more than with me. That's not true. Isn't it? You're the one she runs to when she's excited about something. You're the one who makes her laugh, who helps her be a child instead of a ghost. His hand came up, fingers ghosting along her jawline. You're what we both needed, Maya. I just didn't know it until you walked into that diner. The touch was featherlight, barely there, but it sent electricity racing through Maya's veins. She knew she should pull away, should maintain boundaries, should remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But when Dante leaned closer, his gray eyes searching her face for permission, Maya found herself leaning in too. His kiss was gentle, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Maya pressed closer instead, her hands finding his bare shoulders, feeling the strength there, the barely contained power. He made a low sound in his throat and deepened the kiss, one hand sliding into her hair while the other settled at the small of her back. It was different from any kiss Maya had ever experienced, controlled but desperate, gentle but consuming, like he was trying to memorize every detail while simultaneously holding himself back from taking more. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "This is a bad idea," he whispered. "Terrible idea," Maya agreed. "You work for me. You're here for Isabella. I know. If this goes wrong, it could hurt her. I know that too. But I can't stop thinking about you." His hand tightened in her hair. "Can't stop watching you with her, seeing how you've changed both our lives. Can't stop wanting." Maya kissed him again, cutting off the words. This time there was less restraint, more hunger. His hands roamed her back, pulling her closer, and she could feel his heart, hammering against her palm where it rested on his chest. A sound from Isabella's room, a small whimper, made them spring apart like guilty teenagers. Dante was at his daughter's door in an instant, but the whimper didn't repeat. Isabella had simply shifted in her sleep, one small hand reaching out for the stuffed elephant Maya had given her last week. "We should stop," Dante said quietly, not looking at Maya. "Before this becomes something we can't take back. Is that what you want? To stop?" He turned to face her, and the raw longing in his eyes made her breath catch. "What I want and what's right for Isabella aren't always the same thing. What if they could be?" "Maya, I'm not asking for promises or declarations," Maya interrupted. "I'm just saying that maybe this doesn't have to be either or. Maybe we can figure it out as we go." Dante studied her for a long moment. "You make it sound simple. It's not. But nothing worth having is." He crossed back to her, cupped her face in both hands, and kissed her forehead with a tenderness that made her eyes burn. "Get some sleep. We'll talk about this later, when we're both thinking clearly. And when will that be?" "Probably never, where you're concerned." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. "But we'll try anyway. Good night, Maya." "Good night." Maya returned to her room, but sleep was impossible. Her lips still tingled from his kiss. Her skin still remembered the heat of his touch, and her mind wouldn't stop replaying every moment in that hallway. She was falling for Dante Russo, falling for a criminal, a killer, a man whose world was built on violence and danger and secrets she didn't fully understand. And the terrifying part was that she didn't want to stop. The next morning brought unwelcome reality crashing back. Maya was helping Isabella with her reading when Marco appeared in the library doorway, his expression grim. "Mr. Russo needs to see you in his office," he said to Maya. "Now." Isabella looked up, immediately sensing the tension. "Is Papa mad?" "No, sweetheart. Everything's fine," Maya signed, even though Marco's face suggested otherwise. "Keep reading this chapter, and I'll be back soon." She followed Marco through the mansion, her stomach knotting with anxiety. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the charged atmosphere, could see it in the way security personnel moved with increased urgency. Dante's office was packed with people when she arrived. Marco and 3 other security team members, Teresa, looking worried, and 2 men Maya didn't recognize, both wearing expensive suits and expressions that suggested they weren't happy to be there. Dante stood behind his desk, his posture rigid with controlled anger. When he saw Maya, something flickered in his eyes, relief, maybe, or concern. "Maya, come in. Close the door." She did, very aware of all the eyes tracking her movement as she approached the desk. "These gentlemen are from the Calabrese family," Dante said, his voice cold and formal. "Apparently they have questions about you." Maya's blood turned to ice. "About me?" The older of the 2 men, mid-50s, with slicked-back gray hair and dead eyes, smiled without warmth. "Maya Chen. I am 26 years old. Dropped out of Northwestern 3 years ago after your parents died. Currently drowning in student loan debt, working minimum wage jobs until," he paused meaningfully, "you suddenly moved into Dante Russo's home. Very convenient timing." "What are you implying?" Maya asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." He pulled out his phone and turned it toward her. On the screen was a photo of Maya and Isabella in the garden yesterday, laughing together while they planted flowers. "You've gotten very close to Russo's daughter. Close enough to be trusted. Close enough to have access to parts of his life he keeps carefully guarded. Understanding crashed over Maya in cold waves. You think I'm a spy? Are you? The question came from Dante, and Maya's heart stopped at the cold calculation in his voice. He was watching her with the same intensity he'd used that first night at the diner, evaluating, measuring, looking for deception. No, Maya said firmly. I'm not a spy. I'm not working for anyone. I'm just trying to help Isabella. Very noble, the Calabrese man said. But we have sources that suggest otherwise. Sources that say you've been asking questions about Russo's operations, his business partners, his security protocols. That's a lie. Is it? Because we also have sources that say you've been meeting with someone very interested in bringing Russo down. Maya's mind raced. She hadn't met with anyone, hadn't asked questions beyond what was necessary to help Isabella. This was a setup, a trap designed to create suspicion where none existed. Show me proof, she demanded. The man smiled. We don't need proof. We just need to plant doubt. He turned to Dante. Can you really trust her, Russo? Can you risk your daughter's safety on some waitress who appeared out of nowhere and somehow gained access to your most vulnerable point? The silence that followed was suffocating. Maya watched Dante's face, saw him processing the accusation, weighing the risks, saw the exact moment when the protective father overrode everything else. Marco, take Maya to her room, Dante said quietly. She's not to leave or communicate with anyone until we verify these claims. Dante, no. Maya started forward, but Marco was already there, his hand gentle but firm on her elbow. I'm sorry, miss, he said quietly. Orders. Dante, please, you know this isn't true, Maya pleaded. I would never hurt Isabella. Never. I don't know what's true anymore. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Maya saw the conflict in his eyes. I can't take chances with my daughter's life. Not even for you. The words hit like a physical blow. Maya let Marco lead her from the office, her legs moving automatically while her mind screamed. This was wrong, all wrong. The Calabrese family was playing games, manufacturing evidence to create division, and Dante was falling for it. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe he'd always suspected her, always kept part of himself closed off and guarded. Maybe last night's kiss had meant nothing. Marco deposited her in her room with an apologetic expression and stationed himself outside the door. Not quite a prisoner, but close enough. Maya sank onto the bed and tried to think. Someone was setting her up, but who? And why? What did the Calabrese family gain from making Dante suspicious of her? The answer came in a sickening rush. If Dante didn't trust Maya, he'd send her away. And if Maya left, Isabella would be devastated, distracted, vulnerable. The perfect moment for an attack. This wasn't about Maya at all. This was about getting to Isabella. She had to warn Dante, had to make him see that this was a setup designed to isolate his daughter. But Marco had orders, and she doubted he'd listen to her theories without proof. Maya began pacing, her mind working furiously. There had to be a way to prove her innocence, to expose the Calabrese family's lies. She just had to. Her door opened. Isabella stood there, her face streaked with tears, her small body shaking with the force of her sobs. They said you're leaving, she signed frantically. They said you lied to us. Said you were bad. Said you're going away forever. Oh, sweetheart, no. Maya dropped to her knees and pulled Isabella into her arms. Over the little girl's shoulder, she could see Marco in the doorway, looking conflicted, but not stopping this reunion. Did you lie? Isabella pulled back, her eyes searching Maya's face desperately. Did you trick us? Never, Maya signed fiercely. I came here to help you, and that's all I've ever done. Someone is lying about me, telling your papa things that aren't true. But I promise you, I promise I will never hurt you or your father. Then why does Papa look so angry? Why is everyone upset? Because he's scared. Because the bad people are trying to hurt us by making us not trust each other. Maya cupped Isabella's tear-stained face. But I need you to listen very carefully. Can you do that? Isabella nodded. I think the bad people want your papa to send me away because they know you'll be sad. They want to wait until you're sad and not paying attention, and then they'll try to hurt you. Maya's hands moved slowly, making sure Isabella understood every word. So I need you to be extra careful. Stay close to your papa. Don't go anywhere without Marco or the other guards. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you run and find your papa immediately. Understand? You think they're coming for me? Isabella's eyes went wide with fear. I think they might try. But your papa is very smart and very strong, and he won't let anything happen to you. I just need you to help him keep you safe." "What about you? Who keeps you safe?" The question made Maya's throat tight. "Don't worry about me. Just promise you'll be careful." "I promise." Isabella hugged her tightly. "I don't want you to go." "I don't want to go either." Marco cleared his throat from the doorway. "Miss Isabella, your father is looking for you." Isabella clung tighter to Maya. "No, I'm staying here." "Sweetheart, you have to go," Maya signed gently. "Your papa needs to know you're safe, that you're with him. Can you do that for me?" Reluctantly, Isabella released her grip. She signed one more thing before Marco led her away. "I believe you. Even if no one else does, I believe you." Then she was gone, and Maya was alone again with her thoughts and her fear, and the growing certainty that time was running out. Night fell, and no one came. Maya remained in her room, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. Footsteps in the hallway, muffled voices from downstairs. The distant sound of a car engine starting and fading away. She'd tried the door twice, locked from the outside. Marco, or one of his team, was still stationed outside, under orders to keep her confined until Dante decided what to do with her. Maya pressed her forehead against the window, looking out at the grounds. Security lights illuminated the perimeter, and she could see guards making their rounds. Everything looked normal, controlled, safe. But Maya's instincts screamed that something was wrong. It was just past midnight when she heard a sound that didn't belong. A muffled thump from somewhere below, followed by silence that felt too heavy. Maya's heart began to race. She moved to her door and pressed her ear against it, listening. Nothing. She knocked, quietly at first, then louder. "Marco? Marco, are you there?" No response. Maya's blood turned to ice. She pounded on the door harder. "Marco, someone, anyone." Still nothing. The Calabrese family wasn't just creating doubt. They were providing distraction, getting Dante's security focused on Maya while they made their real move. They were here, in the house, coming for Isabella. Maya looked around her room frantically, searching for anything she could use. The furniture was too heavy to move. The windows didn't open far enough to climb through. She was trapped, helpless, while somewhere in this mansion, Isabella was in danger. Unless Maya grabbed the desk chair and swung it hard at the window, the glass cracked but didn't shatter. She swung again, putting all her strength into it, and this time the window exploded outward in a shower of glittering fragments. The alarm immediately began shrieking, and Maya didn't hesitate. She knocked out the remaining glass shards, grabbed the heavy curtain, and used it to protect her hands as she climbed through the window frame. She was 2 stories up, but there was a decorative ledge about 6 feet below. Maya lowered herself as far as she could, then dropped, praying. She judged the distance correctly. Her feet hit the ledge, and for a terrifying moment, she teetered on the edge. Then she caught her balance, pressed herself against the wall, and began moving sideways toward the drain pipe she'd noticed during her first week here. The alarm was still blaring, and she could hear shouting from inside the house. Good, maybe that would confuse the attackers, buy Isabella some time. Maya reached the drain pipe and climbed down, her hands screaming in protest, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. When her feet touched the ground, she ran. Isabella's room was on the east side of the mansion, her window facing the gardens. Maya sprinted across the lawn, ignoring the security lights that blazed to life, tracking her movement. Guards were shouting, converging on her position, but she didn't stop. She had to get to Isabella. Maya reached the wall beneath Isabella's window and looked up. The light was on, unusual for this time of night, and through the window, she could see movement. Too much movement. Someone was in Isabella's room. Maya screamed, "Isabella!" as loudly as she could, though she knew the little girl couldn't hear her. But maybe someone else would. Maybe Dante would. Strong hands grabbed her from behind, spinning her around. Marco, his face bloodied from a fight, his eyes wide with urgency. "They're in the house," he gasped. "Calabrese men, at least 6 of them. They took out 3 of my team before we knew what was happening. Isabella, Mr. Russo is with her. He got to her room first, but they're trapped. We need to fall of the elevator." An explosion rocked the east wing, fire blooming from one of the lower windows. Marco cursed viciously. "They're trying to create chaos, split our forces," he said, already pulling out his phone and barking orders. "Stay here. Stay hidden. Like hell," Maya said. "Isabella needs me." Before Marco could argue, she was running again. this time toward the side entrance that led to the servants' stairs. She knew this house now, knew the back ways that Isabella had shown her during their games of hide-and-seek. She could hear gunfire from inside, sharp cracks that made her flinch, but didn't slow her down. The servants' stairs were empty, the smoke alarm adding to the chaos of sound and confusion. Maya climbed, taking the steps 2 at a time, until she reached the 2nd floor. The hallway was filled with smoke, and she could see 2 bodies on the floor. Calabrese men, judging by their unfamiliar faces, both very dead. Marco's team had been busy. Isabella's door was ahead, partially open. Maya could hear voices inside, one she recognized as Dante's, low and deadly calm, and another voice, unfamiliar, speaking in Italian too rapid for her to follow. Maya pressed herself against the wall and peered around the doorframe. Dante stood in front of Isabella's bed, a gun in his hand, his body positioned to shield his daughter from the 2 men who faced him. Isabella was behind him, pressed against the headboard, her face white with terror. "You're outnumbered, Russo," one of the men said in accented English. "Your security team is scattered. Half your house is on fire. Just give us the girl, and we'll let you live." "Come take her," Dante said coldly. "Let's see how that works out for you." The man smiled. Tough words from a man with only 6 bullets left. "We have reinforcements coming. Eventually, you'll run out of ammunition." "Eventually it isn't now." Maya's mind raced. Dante couldn't protect Isabella and fight effectively at the same time. He needed help. Needed someone to get Isabella out while he held them off. She looked around frantically and spotted a heavy marble bookend on the hallway table. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Taking a deep breath, Maya grabbed the bookend and stepped into the doorway. "Hey!" 3 sets of eyes snapped to her. Dante's widened with shock and fury. The Calabrese men's lit with opportunity. Well, the lead man said. "Our little spy. Come to collect your payment?" "I'm not your spy, you bastard." Maya hefted the bookend. "I'm here for Isabella." "Maya, get out of here!" Dante barked. Not happening. Maya looked directly at Isabella, who was staring at her with desperate hope. She signed quickly. "When I throw this, run to me. Don't look back. Just run." Isabella nodded, understanding immediately. Maya threw the bookend with all her strength, not at the men, but at the lamp on the dresser beside them. It shattered in a spectacular burst of sparks and glass, plunging half the room into darkness. In the chaos, Isabella moved. She was small and fast, darting around her father and sprinting toward Maya with the speed of pure terror. Maya grabbed her, pulling her into the hallway just as gunshots exploded behind them. "Go!" Dante's voice roared. "Get her out!" Maya didn't need to be told twice. She ran. Isabella clutched against her chest, back toward the servants' stairs. Behind them, she could hear more gunfire, more shouting, the sounds of violent struggle. But she couldn't look back, couldn't help Dante. All she could do was protect Isabella. They reached the stairs, and Maya took them as fast as she dared with Isabella's weight in her arms. The little girl's arms were wrapped around her neck in a death grip, her face buried against Maya's shoulder. They burst out of the side entrance into the cool night air, and Maya kept running toward the tree line at the edge of the property. Marco had said to stay hidden, and that's exactly what she'd do, hide Isabella until it was safe. They were 20 feet from the trees when Maya saw the man step out from the shadows. He was older than the others, with silver hair and the same dead eyes she'd seen in Dante's office earlier, the senior Calabrese representative, and he was pointing a gun directly at them. "Going somewhere?" he asked pleasantly. Maya stopped, her arms tightening protectively around Isabella. Don't what? Kill you? That's the plan, I'm afraid." He moved closer, the gun steady in his hand. "You've been far more trouble than you're worth. We thought you'd be useful leverage, but Russo seems to actually care about you. That complicates things. Then let her go." Maya shifted so her body completely shielded Isabella. "This is between us. She's just a child. She's Russo's daughter, which makes her very valuable." He smiled. "But we only need one of you alive to lure him out. Guess which one?" Everything seemed to slow down. Maya saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the cold calculation in his eyes, knew with absolute certainty that he would kill her without hesitation. And in that moment, Maya made her choice. She threw herself backward, twisting so Isabella would land on the grass beneath her, her own body taking the impact and creating a shield between the little girl and the gunman. The shot rang out, impossibly loud in the night air. Maya felt fire explode in her left shoulder, felt her body slam into the ground with Isabella cushioned beneath her. She heard Isabella screaming a thin, terrified sound that Maya had never heard from the little girl before. But Maya couldn't focus on pain or fear. She rolled, keeping herself between Isabella and the gunman, her right hand finding purchase in the grass to pull them both toward the trees. The man walked closer, raising his gun for a second shot, and then Dante was there. He appeared like a demon from the darkness, his suit torn and bloodied, his face a mask of lethal fury. He moved with speed and precision, striking the gunman's wrist so the second shot went wild. The gun flew from the man's hand, and before he could react, Dante's hands were around his throat. "You touched my daughter," Dante said, his voice arctic cold. "You threatened my family. You hurt Maya." The man tried to fight back, but Dante was beyond reason, beyond mercy. Maya turned Isabella's face away, pressing the girl's head against her chest so she couldn't see what her father was doing. It was over in seconds. The man crumpled to the ground, and Dante was immediately beside Maya, his hands carefully assessing her wound. "How bad?" she gasped. "Through and through. Missed the major arteries." His hands were gentle despite his fury. "You jumped in front of a bullet. You jumped in front of my daughter." "Of course I did. You could have died. So could she." Maya tried to smile despite the pain. "Seemed like an easy choice." Dante made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He pulled out his phone, barked orders for medical teams and cleanup crews, then turned his attention back to Isabella. "Isabella, look at me," he signed with shaking hands. The little girl lifted her tear-stained face from Maya's chest. "Is Maya dead?" "No, sweetheart. She's hurt, but she's going to be okay." He pulled both of them into his arms, careful of Maya's shoulder. "You're both going to be okay, I promise. The bad men? Gone. All of them. They can never hurt you again." Isabella's hands moved frantically. "Maya saved me. She put her body in front of the bullet. She saved me." "I know." Dante's eyes met Maya's over his daughter's head, and what she saw there took her breath away, gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that made her heart race despite the pain. "She saved us both." Marco appeared with medical personnel, and suddenly Maya was being lifted onto a stretcher, her shoulder being bandaged, Isabella being gently pried from her arms despite the little girl's protests. "I need to stay with Maya." Isabella signed desperately to her father. "Maya needs doctors right now," Dante signed back. "But I promise she's not going anywhere. She's family now. She stays. Forever?" Dante looked at Maya, his expression holding a question and a promise all at once. "If she'll have us, forever." Maya managed to smile despite the pain. "That's a long time." "Not long enough," Dante replied. As the medical team worked on her shoulder, as the adrenaline began to fade and exhaustion took its place, Maya looked at this man and this little girl she'd somehow become responsible for, this dangerous, complicated, impossible family that had claimed her as their own. She thought about the girl she'd been a month ago, exhausted, drowning in debt, invisible to everyone around her. She thought about the moment she'd decided to walk up to Isabella's table, to see a little girl everyone else ignored. One decision, one moment of courage, and her entire life had changed. "I'll stay," she whispered, "for however long you'll have me." "Forever it is then," Dante said, and kissed her forehead with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the violence he'd just committed to protect them. Isabella wormed her way past Marco to press herself against Maya's good side, her small hand finding Maya's and holding tight. And for the first time in 3 years since her parents died, since she'd lost Lily, since the world had become a cold and lonely place, Maya felt like she'd finally found where she belonged, even if that place was in the middle of chaos, danger, and a love she'd never expected to find. The morning sun painted the hospital room in shades of gold and amber. Maya woke to find Isabella asleep in the chair beside her bed, curled up with the stuffed elephant Maya had given her weeks ago. Dante sat on the other side, his hand resting lightly on Maya's uninjured arm, his eyes closed but his posture suggesting he was ready to wake at the slightest threat. Maya studied his face in the soft morning light, the lines of exhaustion, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way even in sleep his body remained coiled and ready for danger. This was a man who never truly rested, who carried the weight of his world on shoulders that shouldn't have to bear so much alone. But maybe they didn't have to anymore. As if sensing her gaze, Dante's eyes opened. He straightened immediately, leaning forward to examine her face. "Pain? Manageable. How long was I out?" 8 hours. "The doctors say you were lucky, clean shot, no permanent damage. You'll need physical therapy, but you should heal completely." His hand tightened on her arm. "You took a bullet for my daughter." I'd do it again. I know. That's what terrifies me. Dante's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I can't lose you, Maya. I can't. When I saw you on the ground, bleeding, I thought. His voice broke, and Maya reached up with her good arm to cup his face. I'm okay. We're all okay. Because you put yourself in danger. Because you're too brave and too selfless and... He stopped, pressing his forehead against hers. I was supposed to protect you. That's my job. And instead, you protected us. That's what family does, Maya said quietly. We protect each other. Family? He pulled back to look at her, his gray eyes intense. Is that what we are? I think so. If you want to be. Maya Chen, I have wanted you since the moment you signed hello to my daughter and made her smile for the first time in 2 years. I have wanted you every day since, watching you bring light and joy and chaos into our ordered, careful, lonely lives. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I want you as Isabella's guardian, her teacher, her mother in all the ways that matter, and I want you as mine, my partner, my love, my wife, if you'll have me. Maya's breath caught. Dante, I know it's fast. I know this world is dangerous and complicated and not what you signed up for, but I also know that life is short and unpredictable, and I'm done wasting time on fear. He kissed her palm. Marry me, Maya. Help me raise Isabella. Build a life with us. Let us be your family, the way you've become ours. Tears blurred Maya's vision. You're proposing to me in a hospital room while I'm on pain medication? I'm proposing to you while you're brave and brilliant and still smelling lightly of gunpowder from saving my daughter's life. If that's not the perfect time, I don't know what is. Maya laughed, which hurt her shoulder but felt worth it anyway. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be Isabella's mother. Yes, to all of it. She pulled him down for a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promises. Even though you're a criminal and your world is dangerous, and I'll probably spend the rest of my life terrified that something will happen to you or Isabella, I can live with terrified. I can't live without you. A small sound made them both turn. Isabella was awake, watching them with enormous eyes. Are you getting married? She signed. Maya smiled. Yes. Is that okay with you? Are you going to be my mama? Isabella's hands trembled slightly with the question. If you want me to be. Isabella's face crumpled, and she launched herself carefully onto the hospital bed, wrapping her arms around Maya's neck and sobbing. But these were happy tears. Maya realized the kind that came from hope finally fulfilled. I thought you were dead, Isabella signed when she finally pulled back. I thought the bad man killed you and you'd leave me like Mama did. I'm not going anywhere, Maya signed firmly. I'm staying right here with you and your papa for as long as you'll have me. Forever? Forever. Isabella turned to her father. She means it. Right, Papa? She's really staying? She's really staying, Dante confirmed, pulling them both into his arms. We're a family now, all three of us. They stayed like that for a long moment, tangled together in a hospital bed, battered and exhausted but somehow complete. Maya thought about the journey that had brought her here, all the pain and loss and struggle. Thought about the moment she'd decided to see a little girl everyone else ignored. One decision, one act of kindness, and it had changed everything. I love you, she whispered to Dante, to Isabella, to this impossible family she'd found in the middle of chaos. We love you too, Dante replied, and Isabella signed the same words, her small hands shaping them with absolute certainty. Outside the hospital window, Chicago stretched toward the horizon, dangerous and beautiful and full of possibility. Maya's old life was gone, burned away in the fire of violence and protection and choices that couldn't be taken back. But her new life was here, in the arms of a mafia boss who loved her and a little girl who needed her. It was complicated and dangerous and probably insane. It was also perfect, and Maya wouldn't change a single thing. 6 months later, Maya stood in the garden of the Russo estate, watching Isabella play with a group of children her own age. Real friends, from the small private school they'd carefully vetted and enrolled her in, where the teachers knew sign language and the other students were learning it too. Isabella was laughing, running through the flowers with a little boy who was teaching her some complicated game involving rocks and sticks and rules Maya couldn't follow. She looked happy, free, like the child she'd always deserved to be. You're thinking too loud, Dante said, wrapping his arms around Maya's waist from behind and pulling her back against his chest. I can hear your brain working from here. Maya leaned into his warmth. I'm just thinking about how different everything is. 6 months ago, I was drowning in debt and exhaustion. Now I'm married to a crime boss and raising his daughter, and somehow that's the sanest my life has ever felt. Sanest is a stretch, Dante murmured against her ear, but I'll take it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Isabella play. The wedding had been small and private, just family and the few people Dante trusted absolutely. Maya had worn a simple white dress. Isabella had been the flower girl, and Marco had walked Maya down the aisle since her parents weren't there to do it. It was perfect. Life in the Russo household had settled into a new rhythm. Maya spent her days teaching Isabella, working on the little girl's socialization and education, slowly helping her heal from the trauma of her mother's death. The nightmares still came sometimes, but less frequently, and Isabella was learning to talk about her fears instead of holding them inside. Dante had shifted some of his business operations, becoming more involved in legitimate enterprises while carefully distancing himself from the violent aspects of his work. He'd never be completely clean, that wasn't possible in his world, but he was trying to build something better for Isabella to inherit, something that wouldn't require his daughter to choose between love and safety. Mama, Papa. Isabella was running toward them, her new friend trailing behind her. Can Diego stay for dinner, please? His parents said it's okay if you say yes. Maya glanced at Dante, who was already pulling out his phone to have Marco run a background check on Diego's family. Some habits were hard to break. If his parents approve and Marco confirms security, then yes, Maya signed back. Isabella squealed with delight and dragged Diego back toward the garden, already planning what games they'd play after dinner. She called you Mama, Dante observed quietly. She's been doing that for a few weeks now. Is that okay? It's more than okay. He turned Maya in his arms so they faced each other. You've given us both something I didn't think was possible. You've given us normalcy, joy, a life worth living instead of just surviving. You've given me those things too, Maya said, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. I was so lost, Dante, so tired of being invisible and alone. And then I met you and Isabella, and suddenly I mattered. I had a purpose. I had a family. You have more than that. Dante kissed her softly. You have us, completely, devotedly, forever. Forever, Maya agreed. I like the sound of that. From the garden, Isabella's laughter rang out, bright and clear and full of life. It was a sound Maya never got tired of hearing, the sound of a little girl who'd been invisible finally being seen, who'd been silent finally finding her voice. Maya had walked into a diner 4 months ago to serve a lonely child. She'd had no idea that a simple act would lead her to love, to family, to a life she'd never imagined but couldn't live without. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes courage was as simple as seeing someone everyone else ignored. Sometimes family wasn't about blood, but about choice, choosing to show up, to care, to protect, and be protected in return. Maya had made her choice the moment she'd signed hello to a little girl no one else would talk to, and she'd make that same choice every single day for the rest of her life. Because this Dante's arms around her, Isabella's laughter in the air, the sun setting over their fortress home, this was worth every risk, every danger, every moment of fear. This was love. This was family. This was home. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.